Our thoughts will eventually come out as our words. They will eventually come out as our actions. Our actions over time repeated become habits. But it all begins in how you think. If that's not right, if you don't get it right at that point, you're going to have a cascading effect that is going to affect how you speak to other people, but more importantly, how you speak to yourself.
Staying motivated takes work. If you don't work on your motivation, you become unmotivated. Join Oumar Jang as he shares inspirational stories and tips to get you motivated to do whatever you need to do. This is the Motivational Voice Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Motivational Voice Podcast. This is session number 56. Today, we are talking about mindset. It seems these days that wherever you turn, people are talking about mindset. You have to have the right mindset. You have to make sure that you are taking the right mindset training, and that mindset is important to success. But is mindset really that important? In today's episode, we are going to not only answer that question, but also share with you some important nuggets about mindset. Let's get started. William, welcome to the podcast.
Oumar, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation. I understand that you actually live in my old neighborhood, at least in the tri-state area of the DC area. So I'm a bit jealous of what you have exposure to in that area. How are things going?
Things are great. I live out near the mountains, so it's nice to look out the window and see those every day.
That's nice. Here in Minnesota, everything is pretty much flat.
Oh.
And it gets really cold in winters, but we have wonderful summers. So.
That's a good thing.
William, would you just take a minute and introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us what you do?
Sure. I am a mindset and leadership coach. I work with entrepreneurs. I work with agency owners. I work with leaders of many different stripes to help them understand that mindset undergirds so much of what they do, so much of how they do it. And it's the key to 95% of their success. It's also the reason for 95% of their failure. And so what I do is I come alongside these leaders and help them to discover ways to deal with it directly instead of just avoiding it, to understand how it works and how they can leverage it to move from where they are to where they want to be.
Interesting definition there, and we'll dig into that a little more. But I want to go maybe 20,000 feet here and ask you, we hear a lot about mindset. These days, wherever you turn, people are talking about mindset or to some extent mindfulness. In terms of mindset, what does it really mean? What does mindset mean, actually?
You know, when I think about mindset, this is how you think. This is how I think. This is the framework through which we view the world. It's the lenses or the glasses that we look at the world through. You and I look at the world in different ways. And our mindset controls how we perceive, how we interpret, and how we act. Our habits, our thoughts, our actions, all of those are rooted in our mindset.
One thing you said earlier at the beginning of the podcast was that mindset was key to success, but it's also key to failure.
Yes.
Can you talk about, so why is mindset important?
How you think affects everything. And that seems so self-explanatory, and most people are probably nodding their heads or even possibly thinking, well, duh, of course it does. But truly, this is a piece that I find most entrepreneurs, most leaders miss. We focus on what we do. We focus on what we say. We learn to speak in different ways. We learn to act in different ways. We develop different systems and habits. But every one of those things is rooted in how we think, right? Our thoughts will eventually come out as our words. They will eventually come out as our actions. Our actions over time repeated become habits. But it all begins in how you think. If that's not right, if you don't get it right at that point, you're going to have a cascading effect that is going to affect how you speak to other people, but more importantly, how you speak to yourself. It's going to affect how you treat other people, the actions that you take. It's going to affect the actions that you take toward yourself. All of this is rooted in your mindset.
Can you talk about a situation where, or just an example in terms of how that concretely, someone might be thinking, yeah, that makes sense. That makes total sense. But can you think of a concrete example where perhaps a positive mindset is coming into play versus, let's say, a negative mindset?
Sure. Let's use a simple one. The people around you can dramatically impact your mindset. Let's say you spend time with a friend who is incredibly negative. Everything that goes on in life, they see the glass as half empty. Something's always wrong. Something's always wrong. This is what's wrong. Hey, look at what's going on. What's happening over here? Blah, blah. They're going to tell you the bad side. They're going to tell you the negative. Well, guess what happens? The more time you spend with that person, the more your mindset gets affected. And the more you begin to look through those same lenses. This is going to affect how you talk to other people. This is going to affect what you do, how you speak. All of that starts in your mindset, which can be affected by your own self and by other people. Now, let's flip that. Let's say you start spending time with somebody who's incredibly positive, who sees everything as potential, everything as opportunity. Well, guess what? Over time, you're going to start to see through those same glasses. Because your mindset has been affected, in this case, by something outside of you, by someone else and their influence in your life, their influence on your mindset. Those are simple examples, but it's just to show that your mindset can change. It can adjust and be adapted. You simply have to make a choice. That's the challenge. For most of us, we don't make that choice. For most of us, we just go with the flow with whatever the path of least resistance is. And we get the results that we're currently getting. If you want different results, I think Ed Deming was right. You have to do something different.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think, we can go in so many, there's so much to unpack there in terms of, I have seen personally that I am, the type of person that I'm generally very motivated in terms of what I do and things that I pursue. But I'm a human being. There are times where I will sit down and I'll start to feel that I'm not as motivated as I need to be, right, to get things done, or maybe I'm teetering towards procrastination in some cases. And generally, when that starts to happen, I have these triggers that I've learned over time to recognize, and I will immediately. And those triggers could be maybe I'm deciding to watch the news. I watch the news about maybe half an hour a day. Either I listen to the news or watch the news. But if I find myself taking longer than that half an hour, I start to realize, okay, I am lingering here and there's a reason. And the way I turn that off is generally I would go seek out something that makes me feel motivated or inspired, or that pushes me to want to take action, which is, I think, very in line with what you were just talking about now. Someone might be listening to this and saying, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I now see the pattern. But how can someone start to maybe put in place behaviors or habits that might help them gravitate towards a better mindset or a positive mindset?
It's a great question. One of the things that I work with clients on is helping them to increase their awareness of what their mindset currently is. So many of us, we're not aware. We don't see it because it's very difficult to see the whole picture when you're in the frame. That's why you need somebody from the outside, somebody with a different perspective who's going to help you to see what you simply don't see. Once you're aware of it, then you can understand where you are, and then you can say, hey, this is not where I want to stay. I want to change. I want to move from here to there. Well, now we can build a pathway to get there. But really and truly, Oumar, it starts with understanding where you are. It helps with understanding the awareness of what your current mindset is, and too few people have that awareness.
Are there certain things that you can, certain habits maybe that you can do concretely, for example, in life? Maybe an example that I gave was, if I'm starting to recognize those triggers or feel that I'm procrastinating, I know that I need to shift my mindset or do something different that will give me the right mindset.
Yes.
What have you seen in your experience that has worked for clients or maybe even for yourself?
I think you just keyed in on something with your example, and that is you said, "Hey, sometimes I feel like I don't feel like doing this. I don't feel like this." And we see this often around diet or exercise, right? I don't feel like eating that way today. I don't feel like going to the gym. I don't feel like exercising. What do we do then? Well, most often we don't do it because we don't feel like it. We're waiting for the feeling to drive the behavior. If once we have the feeling, then we will go do that thing. Well, that's backwards. See, so often the feeling follows the action. It follows the behavior. And so something that I do and something that I coach my clients with is explaining to yourself, telling yourself verbally, hey, you know what? I'm going to do this regardless of how I feel because I'm going to feel better later. I'm going to feel better after I do this thing. And what I find personally and what my clients find is that, it only takes about 10 or 15 minutes into the exercise or 10 or 15 minutes into the activity, and the feeling follows the action. We're waiting for the feeling to take action, when in reality, the feeling follows the action far more often.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting take on it. Well, having a positive mindset is really, again, like anything, it's a habit, something that you have to learn. Yeah. And if someone is now realizing, I think there's a few things here that I want to ask, but the first thing that I want to talk about is, you talked earlier about the people that you might gravitate towards. Mm-hmm. And I think in the past, I talked a little bit about this in the podcast about how the people you really spend time with, your friends, or they could be family members, can actually, and you talked about this, influence how you feel and your behavior. The challenge there is they might be your best friends or they may be part of your family. How can one maybe distance themselves or find an approach to dealing with that situation?
You have to learn to balance. I like how Andy Stanley talks about this. He says your friends determine the quality and the direction of your life. Sometimes,
like birds of a feather, right?
Right, exactly. Sometimes this might mean that you learn to spend more time with different people, because there's people in your life who are taking you down a road you don't want to be on. And you have to make a hard choice in that moment. I'm going to spend less time with those people because I'm going to choose to spend more time with people who are going to help me go in the direction I want to go. The people around you matter so much more than most of us think. They affect how we think, they affect our actions, and they ultimately will affect our habits. Habits are something that I think are being talked about more and more. James Clear's book on atomic habits was a fantastic read. Highly recommend that for any leader who's listening. What he talks about in that book is the power of what habits do, not just in your life towards your success or failure, but really about building the mindset. That's what he's driving at. What we need to understand is that you are where you are in your life because of your habits, and your habits are rooted. If you think of them like a plant, they're rooted, the roots are in your mind.
This is a good segue for talking about leadership, and when I say that, leadership can be interpreted in so many ways, right? It could be we're talking a supervisor, a C-suite executive, or even just taking lead of your life, right? Now, how do you tie mindset to leadership? How does one impact the other?
How you think affects everything, and I cannot overstate this. Your mindset will drive your success, or it will be the root of your failure. You have to understand this. So when you talk about leadership, so often people want to get into the tips and the tricks and the hacks and all the things we can do to become better leaders. And those things are great. Happy to share as many of those things with people as I can. But at root, truly, all the tips and tricks and tools and hacks in the world are not going to help you if you don't have your mindset right. What I watch in the world I'm in with entrepreneurs, I find entrepreneurs who start a company, start a business, start an organization, and they start as a solopreneur far more often than not. As they grow, as they develop, they begin to have to hire people around them to help with fulfillment as they find success. And then at some point they look around the table and people are looking at them as the leader. Well, now, wait a minute. I didn't want to be the leader. I don't want to be a boss. I left that world. I don't want to do that. And so what happens is that these leaders will do one of two things. They'll either abdicate their leadership and say, we'll just have a flat organization where nobody's the boss. That's a disaster. Or they will start trying to figure it out as they go. They'll start trying to build the plane while they're flying it. Never done it before. Don't ask for help. And then they start hitting every ditch along the side of the road as they're driving. There's a better way. It starts with understanding where you are. It starts with understanding your mindset. And this is where I come in. I come alongside these leaders and I help them. I coach them, yes, on some practical skills, because leadership is a skill, and like any skill, it can and should be developed. But it starts with your mindset. It starts with what's going on between your ears. Too many people fail as they're trying to grow and scale in their business because they do not develop the mindset of a leader, the mindset of a CEO. They still have the mindset of a solopreneur. That will not take you where you want to go if you want to grow and scale your business. It simply won't. It's not the right tool to use. What I do is I help them to develop the mindset that they need to lead people, which allows them to scale, which allows them to grow, and it allows them to thrive instead of just barely keeping their head above the waterline.
Yeah, no, this is an intriguing conversation in that you might be the smartest guy in the room and you might have even the backing to start a company or start a business, whatever it may be. But if you don't have the right mindset, you're essentially handicapped,
Yes.
And that company is doomed to fail.
Right.
And even if you take it out of the entrepreneurial space, anything you do in life, if you don't have the right mindset, right? If you're thinking to yourself,
Yes.
it's not going to work, it's not going to work, it's not going to work, guess what? It's not going to work, right? So I suspect there is some aspect of reprogramming here that happens as you work with clients.
Yes.
Can you talk us through maybe 2 or 3 things that you do specifically to actually get them to start getting into the habit of thinking the right way, so to speak?
One of the most common things that I deal with is a lack of focus. Often entrepreneurs have a very scattered view of what they're doing. And they look over here and they look over here and they look over here, and shiny object syndrome is very real. And they're constantly just bouncing from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. And that's not going to help you. That's not going to get you where you want to go. I help them develop what I call clear-minded focus. What this is going to do is this is going to help you understand where you need to spend the majority of your time. I have a sticky note on the left monitor in front of me here. It's here every day. I see it every day. And it has a question on it. Is this the absolute best use of my time right now? That is a question that will drive you to clear-minded focus. Without that, what I watch so many entrepreneurs, so many leaders doing is simply reacting. Reacting to the demands of others, reacting to the demands of clients or team members, reacting to what's going on in their own head, thinking, hey, what about that? What about that? What about that? And without a focus, you are never going to find the success that you're after, the success you know you're capable of. What I do is I help them to discover how to find that focus, and I hold them accountable to it. And that's really the secret sauce of coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I think on the first point, the lack of focus part, that can manifest in so many ways. But yeah, to your point, one of the things is, which I have learned to stay disciplined over the years, to not follow that shiny object, right? Because if you're an entrepreneur or a solopreneur, either way, there are so many things that come at you, right? There are so many possible opportunities, and the more you do them, the more your brain tells you, oh my gosh, this idea, that idea. So, and I talked about this in a past episode. You literally have to just say no to everything except for maybe one thing. So on that point, I think one thing that comes to mind, William, is I was the other day. A quote came across my feed, and it was from Steve Jobs, who said something to the extent that deciding what not to do is as important as deciding what to do,
Yes.
what to work on, essentially. He was known for going on a retreat with his employees and telling them, okay, what are the next 10 things we need to focus on? And they'll spend a long time trying to figure out, get their ideas on the list of those 10 things. And once they have it, they will prioritize it. And then he will cross off 7 out of those 10 things and say, we can only do these 3,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So, yeah, so that's really, really important. Thanks for sharing that. So we talked about lack of focus. We also talked about reacting to demands, essentially having a reactive approach to things. And how do you put these things together? Obviously, trying to use every tool in your belt can be challenging. If someone wants to maybe start taking your advice, what would you recommend that they start at? What level?
I would start with focus. I really would, because that's the foundation for what I call catalytic leadership and a catalytic mindset. If you want to make a difference, if you want to see change happen, you have to start with focus. You have to start with your mindset. So often people struggle, whether it's shiny object syndrome, whether it's a lack of focus, whether it's just bouncing from thing to thing to thing, whether it's being reactive in your leadership instead of being proactive. There's so many different challenges, but one that is more and more present when people are honest about it, and this can be a challenge, and sometimes this takes some time to dig into this. But when people are honest about it, what is so often at the root is imposter syndrome. People look at them as the leader and they wonder, in the quiet of the evening when nobody's around and they look in the mirror, they wonder, can I really do this? Is this really going to work? Am I really the leader that this team, this company, this organization needs? That's a very real struggle for so many leaders that I talk to, so many entrepreneurs that I work with. It's a very real struggle. It's a lack of confidence. What we have to understand is that confidence is rooted in past behavior. When you do something again and again and you do it well and you see results come from what you're doing, what does that do? What does that create in your mindset? It creates confidence over time. If you are constantly struggling with can I, am I, should I, will I, it's a very, very, very true point, I believe, that you are not aware enough of where you have come so far, where you started and where you are. If there's been no results, if you've never done anything and never accomplished anything, okay, maybe you have no track to pull from. But most of the leaders I work with do. They have track, they have results, they have wins they can look back at. But instead of focusing on those wins, instead of focusing on what they've done, where they've come from, they're focused on what's not right. They're focused on what's going wrong. Well, when you focus on what's going wrong, you are not gifted. Anybody can do that. Anybody can talk about what's wrong. Anybody can discover what's not going right. That's not hard. What I find value in, and what I train clients to do, is to train to rewire their mindset by focusing on their wins, focusing on what is going right, developing a knowledge base in a wins journal that you add to every single week, if not every day. What's going right? Because then when you struggle with the imposter syndrome, when you struggle with can I, should I, can I, will I, wait a minute. This is a feeling. Let's look at data. You pull out that wins journal and you look through it. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And you re-celebrate those wins that you captured. And you know what that does? Over time, that rebuilds and solidifies the fortress of your confidence.
Very interesting. And buddy, I think that imposter syndrome piece is, first of all, we know that, it's a normal feeling that all of us have.
Yes.
Again, it goes back to mindset, right? And actually, before we started the interview, an email came through from one of my contacts, a previous guest actually, and he had a picture of that he shared of two people walking, down a peaceful Champs-Élysées looking long avenue or boulevard, and they were holding hands. The one on the right was one on the left was kind of thinking there was a thought bubble coming out of his head, and it was filled with stuff. He was thinking about YouTube, his calendar, this, that. And the person on the right was just taking the views. The only thought bubble was the peaceful side that they were walking through, right? So it goes to say that, mindset, right? Mind, comes back to your mind, and you have control of your mind, and you have to get in the habit of controlling your thoughts, focusing on thoughts that matter. So very, very interesting stuff in terms of overcoming that imposter syndrome. Now, I heard you mention journaling as you were talking about imposter syndrome. What are some other tools for being more mindful, or that would help you maybe have a stronger mindset, positive mindset?
Journaling your wins is a big one. That's one that I really recommend to every client that I work with. If you will begin to capture this, you are creating over time a knowledge base that you can pull from. That's going to help you. But that's not the only tool. There are so many other things that can help you to develop and rewire how you're thinking. We've talked about the people that you spend time with, the environments that you're in. Are you in environments that are going to help you grow, that are going to develop that growth mindset? Or are you in environments that are going to teach you that, no, you're fixed where you are? You're going to reinforce that fixed mindset. The environments you're in matter. And that's why I think it's so important to place yourself intentionally in environments where you're going to be exposed to new ideas. You're going to be exposed to new people. You're going to be stretched. When you're in environments like that, those are conducive to growth. Those are conducive to that stretching of your mind. That's healthy. That's good. Too many people are not intentional about this. And so they get the results that they get. That's one habit. Another habit, as simple as it sounds, is replacing what John Acuff calls the soundtracks in your mind with affirmations. Choosing to say, hey, where do I want to go? Who do I want to be? I'm going to reinforce that every single day, twice a day, beginning and end. And I'm going to reinforce those ideas of who I want to be and where I want to go and how I want to grow. When you do that, you are rewiring your mindset intentionally and with purpose. Those are tools that anybody can use. They don't cost you anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in this day and age where you can, there's YouTube, there's Google, there's so many channels and places you could go to just, I think one thing you said, which is really, really important to highlight here, is stretching your mind, right? And it's literally that, right? Your mind has elasticity, and you can stretch your mind by exposing it to new things, new experiences. There's a reason why if you drive the same path, the same road, same highway every single day, you can get home and realize you don't even remember how you got home, right?
That's right.
It's because your mind is not being challenged at all, right? But if you take a path that has, no light and it's in the countryside, all of a sudden your mind is working, it's being stretched. And the same thing can apply to what you're saying. Like you have to challenge yourself to really, to reshape and reprogram your mind. Great conversation, William. One thing I want to maybe highlight, I know that you mentioned that you started doing some trainings on LinkedIn.
Yes.
I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about what that is?
Absolutely. So LinkedIn has some features in what they call creator mode. And it enables me to put content out in ways that people can access that doesn't cost you anything. So I put out a newsletter every other week that has things that I'm currently thinking about, what I'm currently thinking that will help people, some ideas, some suggestions, sometimes a resource to read, a book to check out, or a video to watch. These are ways that I can help people with what I'm currently thinking to help them move from where they are to where they want to be. Another one of those is what you alluded to a minute ago. That's the LinkedIn Live events. I've been doing these. This would be my second one actually coming up tomorrow. So it's a new thing for me, but this is a chance for 20 to 30 minutes for me to share what I'm thinking about a particular topic. Tomorrow's, for instance, is dealing with what so many people who come to me deal with, which is I'm too busy. I'm just too busy. I'm just overwhelmed. I'm slammed. Well, there's a better way. You have on your calendar what you put there. You have in your life what you choose. And if you don't like what's there, it's about choosing something different. What I'm going to talk about tomorrow is how to move from being too busy to being balanced, and what balance really looks like, what it means. Not in the artificial sense, but truly. I believe that there is a place of calm control that everybody can get to. But so many people choose not to. They live in reactionary mode. They're simply reacting to what's happening around them. They're reacting to what other people want or need. They're reacting to everybody else's demands. There's a better way.
Yeah, the analogy I use is just you're letting the waves of life kind of carry you wherever. You're not sailing the boat.
That's right. Exactly. Great analogy. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
You're just being tossed around by the waves. Is that really how you want to live your life? Is that how you want to spend your days? It's not how I want to spend mine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And because the last thing you want to do is wake up and you are, 65, you're looking, wait, this is not what I wanted to do with my life, right?
Exactly.
It might be a bit too late. I don't like to say it's too late. It's never too late, right?
Yeah.
We've seen, people 95 getting bachelor's degrees and,
That's right.
and, I talk about motivation, so it's never too late. So that's one place where people can find you, William. Sorry, were you going to add something?
Well, just in line with what you were saying, I was thinking about Peter Drucker when you said that. Peter Drucker, the father of management, before we really got into the leadership era in the 2000s, late 90s and early 2000s. Before that, it was really all about management. And Peter Drucker wrote so many books around management and what we would call today the leadership gift. But you may not know this. I didn't until I heard it. Did you know that he wrote 2/3 of his massive corpus of works? He wrote 2/3 of his books after he was 65.
No, I didn't. That's well, there you go. That's impressive.
Absolutely. So it's not too late. It's not too late.
Yeah.
If you're not dead, you're not done.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. That's a good point there. Now, if people wanted to get in touch with you, William, where can they get a hold of you?
LinkedIn is a great place to connect with me. I spend a lot of time there. They can also go to my website, catalyticleadership.net, to find out more about the coaching that I provide and the podcast that I host every week, interviewing leaders and helping to mine their stories for principles and insights that can help you on your journey.
Awesome. Any final words before we adjourn?
I think the last thing I would say, Oumar, is this. Mindset is something you choose. You may have a story of origin that caused you to be where you are today. But from this day, you can choose the mindset that you have. Your mindset will determine 95% of your success or of your failure. I'm going to challenge your listeners to be intentional here.
Absolutely. No, well said. Well, thank you very much, William, for coming on the podcast. I appreciate the value drops and the knowledge bombs that you dropped on the podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's truly been an honor.
That was my interview with William Attaway. The most important thing I want you to take away today about mindset is this. Your self-talk, which is the things you say to yourself in your head, the dialogue, in other words, that you have in your mind about situations in your life, is the single most important piece about mindset. So, what is your self-talk? Are you kind to yourself when you are having that self-talk in your head, when no one is listening, when you are the only one who can hear what you are saying in your head? Are you lifting yourself up with kind words and accolades? Or are you reinforcing negative beliefs and repeating negative attributes about yourself? When I work with my clients, I talk about the concept of reframing your negative self-talk, which allows you to turn those negative feelings and emotions about your skills, your knowledge, your abilities, and even your perception of self into strengths, or at the very least, limiting the impact that the negative talk has on your mindset and on your personal growth. Imagine your life as a sailboat. Imagine that you are in the middle of a very tumultuous ocean. When your mindset is not balanced, you are like that sailboat at the mercy of an angry ocean. You have no control over where the waves will take you. If you want to sail your boat in the direction that you want to go, you must take control of your mindset and reframe your self-talk. Be kind to yourself, or be kinder to yourself. Be the one who says positive things in your head about you. You are your very first cheerleader, and if you can't do that, and you rely on others to tell you that, you are going to find it hard-pressed to have people give you those accolades necessarily. So you have to be your first cheerleader. You have to start by having a positive self-talk, by being kinder to yourself, even if you make mistakes, even if you feel that you are not doing what you want to do, or you are not doing well enough in whatever it is that you are doing. You can find the show notes for today's episode on my website at oumarjang.com/session 56. That's session 56. By the way, if you enjoyed what you heard here on this episode today, go ahead and rate the show through your favorite podcast app. It only takes a moment, and rating the show helps the podcast get noticed and helps others discover the show and learn from the information that I share. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with me today. Until next time, please stay safe and motivated, and be kind to yourself. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Motivational Voice Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and rate it. To get in touch with the host, go to www.oumarjang.com.